a billionaire haunted by regret, a love letter lost in the leaves. When Nathaniel Ward finds a stranger's heartbreak on paper, it awakens a longing he thought was long dead. But who wrote it, and why does it feel like destiny? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The October morning breeze swept through Central Park, scattering golden leaves across the walking paths. Nathaniel Ward pulled his expensive coat tighter and kept his head down, his designer headphones blocking out the sounds of the city. At 49, he had everything money could buy, yet felt nothing. His face, handsome but stern, rarely smiled these days. 5 years had passed since his divorce from Victoria, a model-turned-socialite who'd left him for a younger actor. The tabloids had a field day, but Nathaniel retreated into what he knew best, his technology empire. Ward Innovations had doubled in value under his obsessive leadership, but the man himself had shrunk, becoming more isolated with each passing. Quarter of record profits. Another day, another dollar, he muttered to himself, following the same path he walked every morning before heading to his office in Midtown. His routine was sacred, the only thing that kept him sane in a world that had disappointed him at every turn. As he rounded the bend near the elm trees, something brushed against his Italian leather shoe. He almost kept walking. New York was full of trash after all, but something made him stop. A cream-colored piece of paper, folded neatly, slightly damp from the morning dew. Nathaniel picked it up, intending to toss it in the next garbage bin. But as he held it, the quality of the paper registered. This wasn't junk mail or a fast food receipt. It was stationery, expensive and heavy. He unfolded it carefully. The handwriting inside was elegant, flowing across the page in blue ink. It was a letter. But not just any letter, a love letter. "I came back to our bench today," it began. "The one where you first held my hand as the leaves fell around us. 5 years have passed, but I still look for you in every face that passes. Some loves never leave us, do they? They become part of who we are, like the rings inside a tree, invisible but always there, marking time." Nathaniel glanced around, suddenly self-conscious. Was someone watching? Waiting to claim this private confession? But the morning crowd was thin, just joggers focused on their runs and a few dog walkers in the distance. He continued reading. "Don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe just to let these feelings breathe one last time before I finally put them away for good. The park holds too many memories, your laugh echoing down these paths, the way you'd point out shapes in the clouds as we lay on the grass. I miss the person I was when I was loved by you. I miss believing in forever." The letter wasn't signed, it wasn't addressed to anyone specific, yet it felt deeply personal, achingly real. Nathaniel read it again, then a third time. Something about the raw emotion caught in his throat. When was the last time he'd felt anything this genuine, this unguarded? He carefully folded the letter and slipped it into his coat pocket, continuing his walk. But his mind stayed with those words. Who had written them? Who could still feel so deeply after 5 years apart? At his office, Nathaniel found himself distracted. The letter sat in his pocket like a burning coal, demanding attention, while he tried to focus on acquisition reports and product development plans. "Mr. Ward?" His assistant, Jessica, stood in the doorway. "Your 10 o'clock is waiting." "Cancel it," he said suddenly. "Cancel everything today." Jessica's professional smile faltered. "Sir, the board members are already here. They've flown in from—" "I said cancel," Nathaniel repeated, standing up. "Family emergency." It was a lie, but it worked. Nobody questioned family emergencies, especially from a man known for having little family to speak of. Back at his penthouse apartment overlooking the park, Nathaniel carefully placed the letter on his desk. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but his eyes kept returning to that simple piece of paper. He'd built his fortune on understanding patterns, on predicting behavior through data. Yet here was something that defied his analytical mind. Pure emotion captured in ink. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt curious about another human being, not as a business opportunity or a potential threat, but simply as a person with a heart that could feel so deeply. The next morning, Nathaniel returned to the park earlier than usual. He brought coffee and sat on a bench near where he'd found the letter, watching people pass by. Young couples holding hands, elderly men playing chess, mothers pushing strollers. Normal. People living normal lives. When had he stopped seeing them as anything but obstacles in his path? After an hour, he walked to a community bulletin board near the park entrance. He pinned a note written on similar cream-colored paper. To the woman who wrote the letter found beneath the elms, "Your words found a home. I'd like to return them if you're willing to meet." He included no contact information, no name. Just like her letter, it was a message cast into the void, hoping for connection. For days, Nathaniel checked the bulletin board. Nothing. He expanded his search, visiting the park at different hours, asking the pretzel vendor and the caricature artist if they'd noticed anyone posting or looking for a lost letter. Nothing. A week passed and Nathaniel found himself standing before the bulletin board again. His note was still there, untouched. But next to it, a new piece of paper had appeared, cream-colored, with the same elegant handwriting. Some things aren't meant to be returned, but if you truly read it, perhaps we've already met. His heart raced as he carefully unpinned the note. Already met? Had he passed her on the paths, sat near her on a bench? The thought was both thrilling and frustrating. That evening, he wrote a reply and returned to the park, pinning it in the same spot. "Your words woke something in me I thought was long dead. Please tell me more. Who are you?" The next day, another note appeared. "I'm the woman who brings daisies to her mother's nursing home every Sunday. I'm the music teacher who helps children find their voice. I'm the one who still cries at sad movies and believes in second chances, even when they seem impossible. Who are you, stranger, who found my heart on paper?" And so began their correspondence. Each day they exchanged notes on the community board. Nathaniel found himself hurrying to the park each morning and evening, his heart pounding as he approached the board, hoping for her words. He learned her name was Celeste Monroe. She was 44, taught piano and violin at a community arts center, and lived alone in a small apartment in Brooklyn. She'd loved a man who could never fully commit to her, always keeping one foot out the door until he finally walked away completely. In return, Nathaniel shared pieces of himself, not as the CEO of Ward Innovations, but as a man who'd lost his way. He told her about his mother's early onset dementia, how it scared him to watch her brilliant mind unravel. He confessed the emptiness of his marriage to Victoria, how they'd been more like attractive furniture in each other's lives than partners. "Success is its own kind of prison," he wrote. "I built walls to protect myself, but ended up trapped inside them." 2 weeks into their exchange, Celeste wrote, "I've started looking for you, though I don't know your face. Is that strange? Sometimes I imagine I can feel when you're near, reading my words. Do you wear a suit? Are your hands soft or calloused? Do you smile easily or guard it like a secret? In my mind, you have kind eyes." Nathaniel stared at her note for a long time. He'd been so focused on discovering her that he hadn't considered she might be just as curious about him. The thought made him unexpectedly nervous. If she knew who he really was, the Iceman of Tech, as the business press called him, would she still write to him with such openness? That evening he crafted his response carefully. "I don't smile easily anymore, but your letters have changed that. My hands are soft, the hands of someone who types for a living rather than builds. I wear suits because they're armor against a world I stopped trusting years ago. But I'm trying to remember the man I was before disappointment hardened me. You're helping me find him again." Days turned into weeks. October was ending, the trees becoming barer, the mornings colder. Their notes became longer, more intimate. They shared favorite books, childhood memories, quiet dreams they'd never told anyone else. "I play Chopin when I'm sad," she wrote. "The raindrops prelude. The notes fall like tears, but somehow it makes the real tears stop. I watch old black and white movies at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep," he confessed. "The simplicity of those stories comforts me. Good guys win. Love conquers all." Things made sense then. One evening, as Nathaniel was leaving the park after retrieving her latest note, he stopped at his usual coffee shop. As he waited for his espresso, his eyes wandered across the small cafe, and there she was. He knew instantly. She sat alone by the window, grading papers, a cup of tea beside her. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a simple bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wasn't conventionally beautiful like the women he typically encountered in his business world, but there was something luminous about her, something real. Nathaniel froze. She hadn't noticed him yet. His mind raced. How many mornings had he gotten coffee here? How many times had they been in the same room, and he'd looked right through her? The barista called his name, but Nathaniel barely heard it. He was transfixed by the gentle way Celeste smiled as she wrote comments on a student's sheet music, the thoughtful tilt of her head. He'd found her. Or perhaps, as she'd written, they'd already met, passing like ships in the night, unaware of the connection waiting to be discovered. But now that he'd seen her, what should he do? Walk up and introduce himself? Admit he'd been watching her? The thought made his palms sweat. What if meeting face to face ruined the magic of their written exchanges? For the first time in decades, Nathaniel Ward, who made billion-dollar decisions without blinking, was afraid. He took his coffee and left without approaching her, his mind spinning with possibilities and fears. He returned to his penthouse and spent the night staring out at the city lights, the latest letter from Celeste clutched in his hand. By morning he knew what he had to do. He wrote one final note. "I think I know who you are. I've passed you 100 times before I knew what it meant to see. If I'm wrong, I'll vanish. But if I'm right, meet me beneath the elms where the first letter fell. Tomorrow noon." He pinned it to the board and waited, his heart more alive than it had been in years. A light rain fell across Central Park the following day. Nathaniel arrived at the elm trees 20 minutes early, his heart hammering against his ribs. He hadn't been this nervous since pitching his first software company to investors 15 years ago. He paced beneath his black umbrella, checking his watch. Every few minutes, noon approached. The rain softened to a gentle mist. Families and joggers hurried past, seeking shelter from the weather. But there was no sign of Celeste. Had he been wrong? Was the woman in the cafe someone else? Then he saw her. She walked slowly along the path, a purple umbrella held above her head. She wore a simple raincoat and practical boots, nothing like the designer clothes Victoria had insisted upon. Celeste paused at the entrance to the elm grove, scanning faces until her eyes found his. Recognition flickered across her features. So he hadn't been wrong. They had crossed paths before, probably many times in that coffee shop. Nathaniel stood frozen, suddenly unsure what to say. All the clever words that had flowed so easily on paper abandoned him now. Celeste approached, stopping a few feet away. "Is it you?" she asked. "The one who found my letter?" Her voice was softer than he'd imagined, with a slight huskiness that suggested she sang along with her students. Nathaniel nodded. "Yes, I'm Nathaniel Ward." Her eyes widened slightly at the name, but she showed no other reaction. Of course she knew who he was. His face appeared regularly in business magazines and tech blogs. But did she know the man behind the name? The man he'd revealed in their letters? "I'm Celeste Monroe," she said, extending her hand. "Though you already know that." When their hands touched, Nathaniel felt an electric current run through him. Her fingers were strong and slightly calloused, the hands of someone who played stringed instruments. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he admitted. "I wasn't sure I would either." She smiled, and it transformed her face, lighting up her hazel eyes. "But I've been carrying your words with me for weeks now. I needed to see if the man matched them." "And?" Nathaniel asked, suddenly vulnerable. "Do I?" Celeste studied him, her head tilted slightly. "Your eyes are kinder than the photos in the business section suggest. That's a good start." Relief washed over him. She knew who he was, but had come anyway. "There's a cafe nearby," he said. "Would you like to get out of the rain? Talk somewhere dry?" She shook her head. "Actually, I prefer it here. This is where it all started." She gestured to a nearby bench sheltered by the canopy of an elm tree. "Shall we?" They sat side by side, their umbrellas creating a small private space against the misty rain. For a moment neither spoke, the weight of all they'd shared on paper hanging between them. "I should explain about the letter," Celeste finally said. "The one you found. You don't have to." "I want to." She looked straight ahead, watching raindrops fall from the branches. I wrote it on the 5th anniversary of the day James told me he was marrying someone else. We'd dated for 3 years and I thought, she shrugged. Well, it doesn't matter what I thought. He wasn't as invested as I was. I'm sorry, Nathaniel said, meaning it. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But that day, I felt so overwhelmed by memories that I had to let them out somehow. I wrote that letter sitting right here, planning to burn it afterward as some kind of symbolic gesture. She laughed softly. But then one of my students called with a crisis and I rushed off. The letter must have fallen from my pocket. And I found it, Nathaniel finished. I'm glad I did. Celeste turned to look at him. Why? You could have just thrown it away. Most people would have. Nathaniel considered this. Why had a stranger's heartbreak affected him so deeply? I think I recognized something in your words. The loneliness, the feeling that something essential was missing. He paused. I've been successful at everything except what matters most. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Connection. Yes, he agreed. Exactly that. They talked for hours, the rain stopping and starting again, neither of them noticing or caring. Nathaniel learned that Celeste had grown up in a small town in Vermont, the daughter of a high school music teacher. She'd come to New York 20 years ago with dreams of playing violin in the Philharmonic. When that didn't happen, she'd found her calling teaching children instead. He told her about building his company from a small startup into a tech giant, about the endless meetings and mergers and acquisitions that filled his calendar but left his life strangely empty. When Victoria left, he admitted, I was more embarrassed than heartbroken. What does that say about our marriage, about me? It says you married for the wrong reasons, Celeste replied, direct but gentle. We all make that mistake sometimes, trying to fill a gap with the wrong puzzle piece. As afternoon faded into evening, Nathaniel realized he'd missed 3 board meetings and countless emails. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't care. Would you have dinner with me? He asked, as they finally stood to leave. Celeste hesitated. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Why not? Because she chose her words carefully. Because people like you don't usually have dinner with people like me, Nathaniel. Not in the real world. What does that mean, people like me? Billionaires, she said simply. Men whose net worth is discussed on CNBC. Men who date models and actresses. I'm just a man, he insisted. One who's been hiding behind his bank account for too long. Celeste smiled sadly. Let's not rush this, whatever this is. She pulled out a small notebook from her coat pocket, wrote something down, and tore out the page. My number. Call me tomorrow if you still want to. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek, her lips warm against his rain-cooled skin. Then she turned and walked away, purple umbrella bobbing through the park. Nathaniel watched until she disappeared from view, the paper with her number clutched tightly in his hand. The next morning, Nathaniel woke earlier than usual. He'd slept, better than he had in months, despite the turbulent emotions swirling inside him. He reached for his phone, then stopped. No, calling first thing would seem desperate. He'd wait until a reasonable hour. He forced himself through his morning routine, shower, shave, breakfast, checking the clock every few minutes. By 9, he couldn't wait any longer. He dialed Celeste's number with slightly shaking fingers. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Celeste, it's Nathaniel. Ward, he added unnecessarily. Good morning. He could hear the smile in her voice. I wasn't sure you'd call. I told you I would. People say a lot of things they don't mean. Not me, he said firmly. Not anymore. There was a pause, then Celeste said, I have classes until 4 today. After that, I'm free. Dinner? Nathaniel asked, hope rising in his chest. How about coffee first? Baby steps. They agreed to meet at a small cafe in the village, far from the upscale restaurants where Nathaniel was known. As he hung up, his executive assistant Jessica knocked on his office door. Mr. Ward, you missed the Takeda merger discussion yesterday. The board is concerned. Nathaniel looked up, seeing the worry on Jessica's face. She'd been with him for 8 years and had never seen him miss important meetings before. Tell them I had a personal matter to attend to. They're asking if everything is all right with your health, Jessica persisted. Mr. Lowenstein suggested bringing in a temporary CEO if you're unwell. Of course they were circling already, Nathaniel thought bitterly. Robert Lowenstein had been gunning for his position for years. I'm fine, Jessica. Better than fine, actually. Schedule a board meeting for tomorrow morning. I'll address their concerns then. After she left, Nathaniel stared out his office window. At the city below. For years, Ward Innovations had been his entire identity. He'd sacrificed everything for it. His marriage, friendships, any chance at a normal life. Was he really ready to shift his priorities now, all because of a chance encounter and some heartfelt letters? Yes, a voice inside him answered. Yes, he was at 4:30. Nathaniel entered the cafe where Celeste waited. It was a cozy place with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. He spotted her immediately, sitting in a corner with a book open before her. As he approached, he realized she was reading To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, the same book he'd mentioned loving in one of his letters. Good choice, he said, sliding into the chair opposite her. Celeste looked up, her smile warm but slightly nervous. I thought I should see what all the fuss was about. You said it changed how you saw the world. And what's your verdict? I'm only halfway through, but I can see why it spoke to you. She closed the book, giving him her full attention. How was your day? Complicated, Nathaniel admitted. The board isn't happy I've been distracted lately. Because of me? Concern flashed across her face. Because of me, he corrected. I'm re-evaluating some things. It's overdue. Their conversation flowed easily, just as it had on paper. Celeste told him about a young student who'd finally mastered a difficult piece after months of practice. Nathaniel shared a story about his first failed startup before Ward Innovations made him wealthy. I lived on ramen for a year, he said, smiling at the memory. My roommate thought I was crazy, working 20 hours a day on something that kept crashing. But you didn't give up, Celeste observed. Never. When I believe in something, I'm all... Their eyes met across the table, and the air between them seemed to charge with unspoken possibility. After coffee turned into dinner at a nearby Italian restaurant, Nathaniel walked Celeste to the subway station. The autumn night was crisp, stars barely visible through the city lights. Can I see you again tomorrow? He asked. Celeste hesitated. I'm having lunch with my mother. She's in a nursing home in Queens. Early-stage Alzheimer's. Nathaniel remembered what he'd written in one of his letters about his own mother's dementia. I understand. The day after, then. You're persistent, she said, but she was smiling. Like I said, when I believe in something, Celeste's expression grew serious. Nathaniel, I need to ask you something. What exactly are we doing here? I'm a music teacher who shops at discount stores. She gestured vaguely. This doesn't happen in real life. It's happening right now, he countered. And I don't care about the rest. You might not, but the world will. Your board, your shareholders, the press. They'll all have opinions about you dating someone like me. Let them talk. Nathaniel took her hand. All my life, I've made decisions based on what made sense on paper. Look where that got me. Rich and miserable. He squeezed her fingers gently. For once, I'm following my heart instead of my head. Celeste studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, day after tomorrow. But I'm teaching until 6. I'll... Wait, Nathaniel promised. The next day dragged endlessly. The board meeting went as expected. Questions about his commitment, veiled references to personal issues, suggestions that perhaps he needed a break. Nathaniel addressed them all calmly, assuring the board that he remained fully dedicated to the company. It wasn't entirely a lie. He still cared about Ward Innovations, still took pride in what they built. But for the first time, he saw it as just one part of his life, not the whole of it. That evening, he found himself driving to Queens. He hadn't planned it, but as rush hour traffic crawled along the expressway, he realized where he was headed. Sunrise Gardens was one of the best nursing homes in the city. He'd researched it after Celeste mentioned her mother. The receptionist looked surprised when he gave his name, but directed him to the garden terrace where residents often gathered in the evening. There he found Celeste, sitting beside an elegant older woman with the same hazel eyes. They were looking through a photo album together, Celeste patiently reminding her mother of names and places when confusion clouded her face. Nathaniel hung back, not wanting to intrude, but as if sensing his presence, Celeste looked up. Surprise, then warmth filled her eyes. "Mom," she said gently, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." Her mother looked up, momentarily lucid. "Is this the man you've been writing to? The one who found your letter?" Celeste blushed. "Yes, Mom. This is Nathaniel." "How did you know I'd be here?" she asked him later, as they walked through the nursing. "Home Gardens, I didn't," he admitted. "I just wanted to see you. You drove all the way to Queens on a hunch. Crazy, right?" He laughed softly. "I've never done anything like this before." Celeste stopped walking and turned to face him. "My mother liked you. She doesn't always connect with new people these days." "I liked her too." It was true. Mrs. Monroe had been sharp and funny during their brief conversation, her illness temporarily retreating. "She said you look at me the way my father used to look at her," Celeste continued, her voice soft. "Before he died." Nathaniel felt his heart expand in his chest. "And how's that?" "Like I'm the answer to a question you've been asking your whole life." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Maybe you are." On the drive back to Manhattan, with Celeste beside him in his car, Nathaniel felt a sense of rightness he couldn't explain. They were from different worlds, had lived completely different lives, yet something fundamental connected them, something truthful and rare. "Would you like to see where I live?" he asked as they crossed the bridge back into the city. Celeste tensed slightly. "Your penthouse, you mean?" "It's just an apartment," he said, though they both knew it was much more. "I'm not dressed for Park Avenue," she replied, gesturing to her simple sweater and jeans. "You're perfect exactly as you are." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but no judging my reaction when I see how the other half lives." When the elevator opened directly into his penthouse foyer, Celeste's jaw dropped despite her best efforts. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a glittering panorama of New York at night. "This is... wow," she managed. Nathaniel watched her nervously. "Too much?" "It's beautiful," she admitted, walking to the windows. "But it doesn't feel like you. The you I've come to know anyway." He joined her at the window. "It never really felt like home, just a place to sleep between meetings." Celeste turned to him, her face serious. "Nathaniel, I need to say something. This, us, it's happening so fast. We've only really known each other for a few weeks." "I know, but sometimes when you know, you just know." "That's the problem," she said gently. "I don't just know yet. I like you, more than I thought possible after James, but I need time. I can't just leap into your world overnight." Nathaniel felt disappointment wash over him, but also respect for her honesty. "I understand. We'll take it as slowly as you need." "Thank you." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cool against his skin. "Good things are worth waiting for." As Celeste explored his apartment, Nathaniel watched her. The way she ran her fingers along his bookshelves, stopped to examine photographs, peered curiously into rooms. She was bringing life into a space that had been merely functional before. "You have a piano," she said, surprised, as they entered his rarely used living room. The grand piano sat in the corner, gathering dust. Victoria insisted on it. For entertaining, neither of us played. Celeste sat on the bench and lifted the cover, revealing pristine keys. "May I?" "Please." Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, then began to play. The melody was hauntingly beautiful. Chopin's Raindrop Prelude, he realized. The same piece she'd mentioned in her letter. Nathaniel sat beside her, transfixed by the music and by the transformation in Celeste as she played. Her face softened, her body swayed slightly, with the rhythm completely lost in the moment. When the final notes faded, she remained still, eyes closed. Nathaniel reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're extraordinary," he whispered. Her eyes opened, meeting his. "That's the piece I told you about, the one I play when I'm sad." "Are you sad now?" "No," she said, smiling slightly. Just a little scared. Of what? Of feeling this much. Of believing in something this unlikely. Nathaniel understood completely. He felt it too, the terrifying, exhilarating leap of faith they were both taking, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. He leaned forward and kissed her. Celeste hesitated for only a moment before kissing him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. When they finally broke apart, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Celeste Monroe. I know it's fast and I know it's complicated, but I need you to know that." She drew a shaky breath. "I think I'm falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me. We'll figure it out together," he promised. "Day by day, letter by letter, if that's what it takes." Outside the windows of the penthouse, the autumn moon rose over the city, casting silver light across their entwined figures at the piano, two lonely souls who had found each other through words written from the heart. November arrived with a biting chill. The trees in Central Park stood nearly bare, their branches stark against the steel-grey sky. Inside Nathaniel's penthouse, however, warmth bloomed. Over the past 2 weeks, Celeste had gradually become a regular presence in his life. They'd shared dinners, long walks, and quiet evenings talking until the small hours. Each day, Nathaniel felt the walls he'd built around his heart crumbling a little more, but their blossoming relationship hadn't gone unnoticed. "Mr. Ward, there's something you should see," Jessica said, placing a tablet on his desk one Monday morning. The screen displayed a gossip website with the headline, "Tech Titan's new tune, Billionaire Nathaniel Ward dating unknown music teacher." Beneath it was a grainy photo of them leaving a restaurant, Nathaniel's hand resting protectively on Celeste's back. The article was full of speculation about their unlikely romance and snide comments about what she might be after. "Delete it," Nathaniel said, shoving the tablet away. "Sir, it's already been picked up by several outlets. The PR team suggests releasing a statement." "No statements. My private life is just that, private." Jessica hesitated. "There's more. Mr. Lowenstein called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. He didn't say what it's about, but we both know," Nathaniel finished grimly. Robert Lowenstein had been looking for any excuse to challenge his leadership. This was just the opportunity he needed. After Jessica left, Nathaniel called Celeste at the art center where she taught. "Have you seen the article?" he asked when she came to the phone. "My colleague Caroline showed me," Celeste replied, her voice tight. "Some of my students' parents have seen it too." "I'm sorry. This isn't fair to you." "It's okay," she said, though he could tell it wasn't. "I knew what I was getting into, sort of. Can I see you tonight? We should talk about this face to face. I have a late class, but I could come by after. Around 8. Nathaniel hung up, feeling unsettled. He'd expected attention eventually, but not so soon and not so negative. The article had portrayed Celeste as a gold digger and him as a fool being taken advantage of. It was ugly and unfair, and it was only the beginning. The board meeting that afternoon was exactly what he'd expected. Robert Lowenstein, tall and silver-haired with the practiced charm of old money, stood at the head of the conference table. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, nodding to the few female board members. "I've called this meeting because I'm concerned about the direction of our company. More specifically, about distractions affecting our CEO's judgment." Nathaniel sat silently, letting Robert dig his own grave. "The stock has dropped 3 points since these tabloid stories began," Robert continued, bringing up a chart on the display screen. "Our investors are nervous about Mr. Ward's sudden change in behavior." "My personal life has nothing to do with this company's performance," Nathaniel finally said, his voice level but cold. "It does when it affects shareholder value," Robert countered. "We've built our reputation on stability and strategic thinking. Your recent actions suggest neither." "What actions exactly?" Nathaniel asked, leaning forward. "Dating someone mattered, nothing real. But your company is just a company," he finished. "I built it once, I could build another if I had to. But what we have..." He touched her face gently. "That's irreplaceable." Tears filled Celeste's eyes. "You say that now, but what about a month from now, 6 months, when the novelty wears off and all you're left with is problems I've caused?" "Oh, you've caused nothing," Nathaniel insisted. And this isn't about novelty. It's about finding the one person who makes me feel alive again." They stood in tense silence, the morning light streaming through the kitchen windows. Finally, Celeste nodded, though uncertainty still clouded her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll keep going, but promise me something." "Anything. If this gets too much, if your company really is at risk, you'll tell me. We'll face it honestly." "I promise," Nathaniel said, pulling her into his arms. But as he held her, a voice in the back of his mind whispered that the threat might already be greater than he was admitting. Over the next few days, Nathaniel threw himself into damage control. He held meetings with major shareholders, reassuring them of his commitment to the company. He authorized a stock buyback to stabilize the price, and he kept a closer eye on Robert Lowenstein, whose smug confidence suggested he knew something Nathaniel didn't. Celeste, meanwhile, faced her own battles. Students had started dropping out of her classes after their parents read the gossip articles. The director of the Arts Center called her in for an informal chat about the attention she was bringing to their community-focused organization. "They didn't fire me," she told Nathaniel over dinner at his place that Friday, "but they made it clear that any more negative publicity could force their hand." Nathaniel set down his fork. "That's ridiculous. You're their best teacher. It doesn't matter. They rely on donations from wealthy parents." She sighed. "One mother told the director I was setting a gold-digger example for her daughter." "That's absurd," Nathaniel growled. "You didn't even know who I was when we met." "These people don't care about the truth," Celeste said sadly. "They see what they expect to see." As November progressed, the pressure mounted. Photographers started following Celeste, hoping to catch unflattering moments. Business reporters speculated endlessly about Nathaniel's midlife crisis and its impact on Ward innovations. Then, 3 weeks after their relationship became public, the situation escalated dramatically. Nathaniel was in a meeting when Jessica burst in, her normally composed face flushed with anger. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said, handing him her tablet. On the screen was a gossip blog with the headline, "Gold Digger Revealed, Nathaniel Ward's Girlfriend's Secret Past." The article contained old photos of Celeste with James, the man she'd written about in her letter. It claimed she had a history of targeting wealthy men and that James had narrowly escaped her trap by breaking things off. Most damning of all, it quoted James directly. Celeste always had expensive tastes on a teacher's budget. She was obsessed with the finer things. When I couldn't provide the lifestyle she wanted, she became increasingly demanding. The article went on to suggest that Celeste had deliberately dropped her letter in the park, knowing Nathaniel often walked there. A calculated move to ensnare a billionaire. "This is garbage," Nathaniel said, his voice shaking with rage. "Complete fiction." "There's more," Jessica said grimly. "Davis Digital announced this morning they've acquired 15% of our shares on the open market. It's the beginning of their takeover move." Nathaniel felt as if the floor were tilting beneath him. How did they get so many shares so quickly? "We think someone on the inside has been helping them," Jessica replied, her implication clear. "Lowenstein. It had to be. He'd been laying the groundwork for this all along. Get legal on this immediately," Nathaniel ordered, "and call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." After Jessica left, Nathaniel tried calling Celeste. No answer. He tried again, then texted. Nothing. Worry gnawed at him as he left the office early, heading straight to her small apartment in Brooklyn. He'd only been there once before. Celeste was still shy about the stark difference between their living situations. When she finally opened the door, her eyes were red from crying. "You've seen it," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded, stepping back to let him in. The apartment was tiny but warm, filled with books and music. A violin lay on the coffee table beside scattered sheet music. "None of it's true," Celeste said, her voice hoarse. "James and I broke up because he met someone else, a lawyer from his firm. I never asked him for money or expensive things." "I know," Nathaniel assured her, taking her hands. "You don't have to defend yourself to me." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "The worst part is some of my students' parents believe it. 3 more families pulled out today. She took a shuddering breath. And the director called. They're putting me on leave until the situation resolves. They fired you. Nathaniel was incredulous. Not officially, but yes, basically. She pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. Everything I've worked for, Nathaniel, my reputation, my career, it's all falling apart because of lies. Anger surged through him. We'll sue them. Every last one, the blogs, James, all of them. And make it an even bigger story? Celeste shook her head. That won't help. Then what? We can't just let them get away with this. Celeste was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but sad. I think we need to take that step back we talked about. No, Nathaniel said immediately. That's exactly what they want. It's not about them. It's about us. She looked up at him, her eyes full of pain but also resolve. I'm losing everything, Nathaniel. And from what I hear, so are you. Your company is under attack because of me. Not because of you, he argued. Because of Lowenstein and Davis. Who are using me as their weapon, she finished. Don't you see? As long as we're together, they have ammunition. Nathaniel felt panic rising in his chest. So what are you saying? We just give up? Let them win? I'm saying we need time. Celeste took a deep breath. Time for the story to die down. Time for you to secure your company. Time for me to rebuild my reputation. And us? What happens to us during this time? Her silence was answer enough. No, Nathaniel said again, more forcefully. I won't lose you, Celeste. Not over lies and corporate games. It's not forever, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Just until things settle. And if they don't? If Lowenstein and Davis succeed? If they take my company anyway? Then, at least it won't be because of me, she whispered. Nathaniel paced the small living room, his mind racing. There had to be another way. Some solution that didn't involve walking away from the best thing that had ever happened to him. Then it hit him. What if we give them what they want? He said suddenly. Celeste looked confused. What do you mean? Lowenstein, Davis, they want control of Ward Innovations. Fine, let them have it. Nathaniel, you can't be serious. That company is your life's work. No, he said, taking her hands again. It was, but not anymore. He sat beside her on the sofa, his eyes intense. Listen to me. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have patents, connections, knowledge. I could start over tomorrow if I wanted to. You'd give up your company, just like that. For you? Yes. The certainty in his voice surprised even him. Besides, Ward Innovations isn't what it used to be. The board is full of people like Lowenstein who care more about stock prices than innovation. Maybe it's time for something new. Hope flickered in Celeste's eyes, but caution quickly followed. You might regret it. Resent me for it later. Never, Nathaniel promised. The only thing I'd regret is losing you. For the first time that day, Celeste smiled, a small uncertain curve of her lips. You're certain? Completely. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Let them play their games. We'll start fresh, somewhere they can't touch us. That night they talked for hours, planning a future neither had imagined just weeks ago. Nathaniel would resign as CEO, keeping his shares but surrendering control. They would take some time away from New York, perhaps travel. And when the dust settled, he would launch something new, smaller, more innovative, built on his terms. As Celeste finally drifted to sleep in his arms, Nathaniel felt strangely at peace. The company he'd built had become a golden cage. Walking away felt not like a sacrifice, but like freedom. The next morning he called Jessica before the emergency board meeting. Prepare a statement, he instructed. I'm resigning as CEO, effective immediately. Jessica's shock was audible. Sir, you sure we can still fight this? I'm sure, Nathaniel said. Some battles aren't worth winning. The board meeting was brief and explosive. Lowenstein could barely conceal his triumph as Nathaniel announced his decision. Several board members protested, but their objections felt hollow. Most had already aligned with Lowenstein, sensing which way the wind was blowing. I'll remain a major shareholder, Nathaniel concluded. But it's time for new leadership. I wish you all the best. As he gathered his things to leave, Sarah Chen followed him into the hallway. "They set you up," she said quietly. "I have proof that Lowenstein has been meeting with Davis for months. They orchestrated this whole thing." Nathaniel smiled tiredly. "I know, but it doesn't matter anymore." "It does if you want to fight back," Sarah insisted. "The SEC would be very interested in this information." "Keep it," Nathaniel advised. "Use it if they try to push you out too, but I'm done fighting." Outside, the November wind whipped down the avenue, cold and bracing. Nathaniel breathed deeply, feeling lighter than he had in years. He pulled out his phone and called Celeste. "It's done," he said when she answered. "I'm free." Her voice was thick with emotion. "Are you okay?" "Better than okay," he assured her. "For the first time in my life, I've chosen what really matters." He paused, suddenly nervous. "I'm headed back to my place to pack a few things. Would you come with me? To wherever we decide to go next?" Celeste's answer came without hesitation. "Yes, wherever that is." As Nathaniel hailed a taxi, he noticed a newspaper stand with his face on the business section. "Tech Titan steps down." Tomorrow there would be more headlines, more speculation, more gossip. But for once, he didn't care. The real story, the one about finding love through a lost letter, about choosing happiness over empire. That story belonged only to him and Celeste, and it was just beginning. The winter sun glinted off fresh snow as Celeste and Nathaniel walked hand in hand along the shore of Lake Champlain. 3 months had passed since they'd left New York behind, trading skyscrapers for the peaceful Vermont landscape near the small town where Celeste had grown up. They'd rented a lakeside cottage with a stone fireplace and a room perfect for Celeste's piano and violin. The locals had no idea of Nathaniel's former life as a tech mogul, knowing him only as Celeste's boyfriend from the city. That anonymity felt like a gift. "Penny for your thoughts," Celeste said, squeezing his gloved hand. Nathaniel smiled. "Just thinking how different life was a few months ago. All that chaos seems like another lifetime." Indeed, the media storm had eventually died down. Ward Innovations had officially merged with Davis Digital, creating a tech giant that dominated headlines. For weeks, Robert Lowenstein had been named CEO of the new conglomerate, his ambition finally satisfied. What the press didn't report was that Nathaniel had quietly sold most of his shares before the merger was finalized, making him even wealthier than before. The money sat untouched in various accounts while he contemplated what to do next. "Any regrets?" Celeste asked, studying his face. "Not one," he answered truthfully. "You?" She shook her head. "I miss teaching sometimes, but not the politics that came with it." When they'd first arrived in Vermont, Celeste had worried about finding work, but within weeks, word had spread about the talented violinist who'd moved to town. Now she had a small but growing roster of private students who came to the cottage for lessons, and she'd started playing with the local community orchestra. "Mrs. Bellamy called while you were out chopping wood," Celeste said as they turned toward home. "She wants to know if you'll still help with the library fundraiser next month." Nathaniel laughed. "She's persistent. I'll give her that. She says, you have a way with numbers that the committee needs." Little does she know, he mused. Though he'd kept his former identity private, Nathaniel had gradually become involved in community projects. The local library's outdated computer system had caught his attention, and he'd volunteered to help upgrade it. That small act had led to others, and now he found himself increasingly connected to the town his mother had often described from her childhood memories. As they approached the cottage, smoke curling from its chimney into the clear winter sky, Celeste's phone rang. She pulled it from her pocket, glancing at the screen. "It's Sarah Chen," she said, surprise in her voice. Sarah had been the only board member to keep in touch after Nathaniel's departure. An occasional text or email would arrive, keeping him informed of the company's direction. Mostly for his benefit as a remaining shareholder, she claimed, though they both knew it was more than that. "Hello?" Celeste answered, putting the call. "It's on speaker." "Celeste, hi, is Nathaniel with you?" Sarah's voice crackled through the connection. "I'm here, Sarah," he replied. "Everything okay?" There was a pause before Sarah continued. "Not exactly. The merger's in trouble. Davis has been cooking the books for years, and the SEC is investigating. The stock's in free fall." Nathaniel and Celeste exchanged glances. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, meaning it. Despite everything, he still cared about the company he'd built. "That's not all," Sarah continued. "Lowenstein's resigned. The board is in panic mode." Another pause. "They want you back, Nathaniel, as CEO." For a moment, neither Nathaniel nor Celeste spoke. The wind rustled through bare tree branches, and somewhere in the distance a bird called. "I'm flattered," Nathaniel finally said, "but my answer is no." "Please, just think about it," Sarah pleaded. "Thousands of jobs are at stake. The company needs steady leadership to survive this." "I'll help however I can," Nathaniel promised, "but not as CEO. That chapter of my life is closed." After he hung up, Celeste studied him carefully. "You're sure? I know how much that company meant to you." "It did, once," he acknowledged. "But I found something better." He pulled her close, brushing a snowflake from her cheek. "Besides, I have other plans now." Inside the cottage, warmth enveloped them. A fire crackled in the hearth, and the scent of pine boughs decorated for Christmas filled the air. Nathaniel removed his coat and sat at the old desk in the corner, opening his laptop. "Ward's not the only one who can innovate," he murmured, pulling up the business plan he'd been working on for weeks. New Horizons Technologies would focus on educational software, making cutting-edge learning tools accessible to schools in underserved communities. It would be smaller than Ward Innovations, more focused on impact than profit. The idea had come to him after watching Celeste work with her students, seeing how technology could enhance but never replace the human connection at the heart of teaching. "Speaking of plans," Celeste said, sitting beside him, "my mother's nurse called. Mom had a good day today, remembered everyone's names, even asked about you." Nathaniel nodded. They'd moved Mrs. Monroe to a facility nearby shortly after settling in Vermont. The good days were becoming rarer as her illness progressed, making each one precious. "We should visit tomorrow," he suggested. "I'd like that." Celeste leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "She keeps asking when we're getting married, you know." Nathaniel's heart skipped a beat. They'd discussed marriage in abstract terms, somewhere in the future, but neither had pressed for specifics. "What do you tell her?" he asked carefully. "That we're taking our time, doing things our way." Celeste looked up at him. "But honestly, I've been thinking about it more lately." "Have you now?" Nathaniel turned to face her fully. "Any particular thoughts you'd care to share?" A smile played at the corners of Celeste's mouth. "Just that when you know, and I've known for a while now." Nathaniel felt warmth spread through his chest. "Funny, I've been having similar thoughts." "Have you now?" she echoed, her eyes twinkling. "In fact," he reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a small velvet box. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." Celeste's hand flew to her mouth. "Nathaniel," he opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I'd planned something, more elaborate, but maybe this is better. Just us by the fire in the home we've made together." Tears filled Celeste's eyes as he took her hand. "Celeste Monroe, you found me when I was lost. Your letter, those words you never meant for me to read, they changed everything." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I don't want to waste another day not being your husband. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Yes, with all my heart." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Nathaniel remembered that autumn day in Central Park, how close he'd come to walking past that cream-colored paper without a second glance. How different his life would be now if he hadn't stopped to read. A stranger's heartbreak. Their kiss was gentle, filled with promise. When they broke apart, Celeste said, "We should write our own vows. Real letters like the ones that brought us together." "Already ahead of you," Nathaniel admitted, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. "I started writing mine weeks ago." Celeste laughed, her joy radiant. "I thought I was the romantic one. You've taught me well." Later that evening, after dinner and celebratory champagne, Celeste sat at the piano. Her fingers moved over the keys, playing not Chopin's melancholy prelude, but a bright, hopeful melody that filled the cottage. Nathaniel watched, her marveling at how completely his life had transformed. The ambitious CEO who measured success in stock prices and market share was gone. In his place was a man who counted blessings in simpler things, the sound of music filling his home, the kindness of neighbors who knew nothing of his wealth, the ring now glinting on the finger of the woman he loved. The next morning they drove to Sunrise Gardens to share their news with Mrs. Monroe. Though the weather forecast predicted more snow, the sky remained clear, the winter sun casting long shadows across the landscape. "Nervous?" Celeste asked as they pulled into the parking lot. "A little," Nathaniel admitted. "Even on her good days, your mother doesn't mince words." Celeste laughed. "True, but she adores you." Inside, they found Mrs. Monroe in the common room, seated by the window with a book open on her lap. Today was indeed a good day. Her eyes were clear, her smile immediate when she spotted them. "There's my favorite music teacher," she said as Celeste hugged her, "and her handsome letter finder." "Hello, Elizabeth," Nathaniel said warmly, using her first name as she'd insisted. "You're looking well today." "Flattery will get you everywhere," she replied with a wink. Then her gaze fell on Celeste's left hand, and her eyes widened. "Well, it's about time." Celeste held out her hand, the diamond catching the light. "He asked last night, Mum." Elizabeth Monroe clasped her daughter's hand, examining the ring with approval. "Beautiful. Simple like your father gave me. None of that gaudy nonsense." She fixed Nathaniel with a penetrating look. "You'll take care of my girl?" "For the rest of my life," he promised. "Good." She nodded decisively. "Now, when's the wedding? I need to know how much time I have to find a decent dress." Celeste and Nathaniel exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed details yet. "We're thinking spring," Celeste said. "Nothing too elaborate, just family and close friends." "Here in town?" Elizabeth asked. "Yes," Nathaniel replied. "This is home now." The conviction in his voice surprised even him. After years of luxury penthouses and temporary accommodations around the world, the small Vermont town had become the only place he wanted to be. They spent the morning with Elizabeth, discussing wedding plans and local gossip. As they were preparing to leave, she took Nathaniel's hand. "I may not remember this conversation tomorrow," she said, her momentary lucidity bringing a shadow of the illness's reality. "But know that I'm happy for you both. You found each other, against all odds. That's rare." "I know," Nathaniel said softly. "I won't forget." As they drove home, snow began to fall, light, delicate flakes that danced in the air before settling on the evergreens lining the road. "Spring seems a long way off," Celeste mused, watching the snow. "But I suppose we need time to plan." "We could elope," Nathaniel suggested with a grin. "Vegas, tomorrow." She swatted his arm playfully. "We are not eloping. Besides, I want my mother there. And your sister should be present when her only brother gets married." Nathaniel's sister Laura lived in Seattle with her husband and children. They'd reconnected after his move to Vermont, healing a rift that had grown during his most intense years at Ward Innovations. "You're right, as usual," he conceded. "Spring it is." Back at the cottage, Nathaniel built a fire while Celeste made hot chocolate. The domesticity of their routine still amazed him sometimes, how easily they'd settled into shared life, how natural it felt to plan dinner together or discuss which books to read next. As night fell, Nathaniel checked his email. One last time. Among the usual messages was one from Sarah Chen, sent to his private account. "I understand your decision. The board is considering emergency measures, including selling off divisions to stay afloat. On a personal note, I've accepted a position with a startup in Boston. More innovation, less politics. Thank you for everything you taught me." Nathaniel felt a mix of emotions: sadness for the company's struggles, pride in Sarah's new path, relief that his decision to walk away remained the right one. "Everything okay?" Celeste asked, noticing his expression. "Yes," he said, closing the laptop. "Just Ward news, the company's breaking apart." Celeste sat beside him on the sofa. "I'm sorry. I'm not. Not really," he admitted. "What I built served its purpose. Now it's time for something new." He put his arm around her. "For all of us." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in pristine white, a clean slate, a fresh start. "I've been thinking," Celeste said suddenly. "After we're married, what if we start a music program for kids who can't afford lessons? something connected to your educational software idea. Combining technology and music, Nathaniel considered it. That could work. We could set up scholarships, maybe eventually build a proper arts center. Not too big, Celeste cautioned. Something that feels personal, where each child gets real attention. Like you had growing up here, Nathaniel agreed. They spent the evening brainstorming, their excitement building with each idea. By bedtime, they had the outline of a plan that would bring together their separate talents, his business acumen and tech knowledge, her musical gifts and teaching experience. As they drifted towards sleep, Celeste murmured, "It's strange to think it all started with a letter I never meant anyone to read. The best beginnings are often accidents," Nathaniel replied, pulling her closer. "But where we go from here is our choice." 2 weeks later, on Christmas morning, Nathaniel woke early. Celeste still slept beside him, her breathing deep and even. He slipped quietly from bed and went to his desk, where a cream-colored envelope waited. Inside was his Christmas gift to her, a letter he'd spent days writing, pouring his heart onto the page as she'd once done. But unlike her letter, this one was meant to be found, meant to be treasured. He placed it carefully on her pillow, then went to make coffee, knowing the aroma would soon wake her. As the first light of Christmas Day filtered through the windows, illuminating the simple cottage they now called home, Nathaniel felt a profound sense of peace. The path that had led him here was unexpected, a chance encounter, a lost letter, a love that defied all odds. Yet somehow it felt like exactly where he was meant to be all along. When Celeste appeared in the kitchen doorway minutes later, the opened letter in her hand and tears in her eyes, Nathaniel knew with absolute certainty that the best chapters of their story were still to come. "Merry Christmas," he said softly. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him, the letter pressed between them like a promise. "Merry Christmas," she whispered back. "My love, my heart, my home." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering their cottage in a blanket of white, just as a letter had once fallen onto a path in Central Park, changing 2 lives forever. The end.